All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next class. This one, we're going to be talking about the controllers. We talked about the models in the previous class, and we wanted to see how to now manipulate the data that's coming from the database and call it into our various APIs that we want to call them into. In this particular case, we're going to be calling them into our controllers, and our controllers will be found in our HTTP and folder for controllers within the app folder. If you guys can be able to see, then you can see how I pulled that out. So this is what we're going to be doing. This is going to be like a community blog sort of at the starting point of this. So we're not going to create any admin and special rules yet. We're just going to go over and see how we are going to be configuring our controllers from the very beginning. Like I said, from the very first session that we had, this is for beginners, for people who are just starting out, and this is Laravel 8, version 8. So I'm not going to be that kind of person to tell you, oh, you need to go and look at Laravel version 5 coding and see how they were carried out, and then you just come and progress. That'll take a lot of time. So we're just going to go on and do a beginner's course right here, right now from this. And this session, we're going to be talking about our controllers and basically our MVC architecture. I'd assume that some of you who are coming into coding Laravel may probably have known what an MVC architecture is. But if not, we can go ahead and take a look in our Google. And we're going to take a look at MVC, which stands for Model View Controller. So Model View Controller is a software design pattern commonly used for developing user interfaces that divides the related program logic into three interconnected elements. This is done to separate internal representations of information from the ways information is represented to and accepted from the user. So basically, if we look at this, we have our model, our view, and controllers. The work of the model is to correspond to data that's within the database. Basically, whatever it's going to be called within our application, it's going to represent the calling of the database so that we can be able to manipulate the data within our application. So what they define it as is the model component corresponds to all the data-related logic that the user works with, and this can represent either the data that's being transferred between the view and controller components or any other business logic-related data. For example, a customer object will retrieve the customer information from the database, manipulate it, and update it back to the database, or use it to render data. Now, I want to give a little description of my own as well. The model is, first of all, the most basic unit that's required within our application in an MVC. So that means that whenever we have something to do that needs data, we have to go to the model. Whenever we want to deposit data within the database, we need to also call the model as well, because this is like now where the database looks to. It can't look to the controllers, it can't look to the view. It has to look at the model. Now, when it comes to the controllers and the view and all those, we can actually retrieve data from the model using the view alone. We don't have to actually go to the controllers. But whenever we want to now send data to the model, well, it will be easier to go to the controllers first and then take it to the model, or we can just do it straight from the view. Now, what is the view I keep on talking about? Well, basically everything you see on the website. If you can see color, if you can see anything to do with UI, that is what is entailed in the view. I'll give an example of our basic project over here. This, everything over here you see, the logo, the texting, the everything, that is the view itself. If I come to our project, how do we manipulate such a view? Well, we come to the resources side of things, we look at views, we look at welcome.play.php. If I wanted to say change this text right here underneath documentation, then I can come and look for that inside my HTML rather. Let's see, I think it could be here. should be this one. If not, yeah, should be this one. If not this one, then could be another one. Actually, I just need to scroll aside because I've not gotten used to. Okay, underneath Laravel News, Laracast, and documentation. This one. So inside this side for documentation, I want to say this is a text Steven made. So this is our view. Welcome.update.php. If I refresh, well, the server is not running, so I need to run php artisan serve, and I need to refresh that, and you can see it has changed. This is a text Steven made. Now I'm going to open another terminal so I don't forget that I opened that one for serving the application. Alright, so we have this as our view. What is our controller in this situation? We don't have a controller for this application. The reason why I say that is because this is supposed to be what's the general template or temple foundation for most of our controllers, if not all of them. So what I want to do from the very beginning, I want to do something called authentication. And there are two ways I know how to do authentication. There probably are more ways to do authentication. The first one is using a certain package that has been outlined for us over here. So I'm going to call it, who is it? It's actually in security, I believe, then authentication. So there's some few things that will be scaffolded when we're doing authentication. I know that word scaffold makes it seem a bit hard, but you can as well look at Merriam-Webster or Google for that definition. But basically, from our standpoint, scaffold is to like craft, to draw automatically for us. Like if we call some certain function, they will draw them or doodle them for us. Sorry, I don't know how to say that word properly. Okay, so there's two ways I know how to do authentication. There's this one that's been outlined using Laravel Jetstream, which I actually did a video on, and you guys can go and check that out. Probably I'll put the link in the description down below. Or we'll use a simpler method using Laravel Ui. Now I'm going to go to Laravel Ui, and this is actually, if you go into the documentation for Laravel 7, you'll find it. Laravel UI is there. It's actually just a separate package that can be used even in Laravel 8 and probably all the other Laravel packages that are there to come. You can use it with all kinds of UI properties: Bootstrap, Vue, React. I think Tailwind is also in this, but I'm not sure. But yeah, you can use Bootstrap, Vue, React for this, and we're just going to use Bootstrap because it's very basic in terms of creating whatever we need to create. Okay, so how do we do Laravel UI? So basically inside our project, we're just going to do composer require Laravel UI, and that is exactly what we're going to do. So composer require Laravel UI. So this is a package that enables us to use UI components from wherever based on their JavaScript and CSS contents. So I've already completed installing this, and what this essentially does is now our old PHP artisan used to have, if I was to go back to see our old PHP artisan, it had these commands as follows. So you can see the last one being session, going on to schedule, route, queue, package, all those things. These are all different things that have been added by different packages that belong to Laravel. But what if I did that PHP artisan right now in my next terminal? So if I did PHP artisan and let it run, you can see there's a new package, well, rather command that we can run over here called UI. So that already, like, you can tell that this command over here, Laravel UI, has added this command for us and has enabled us to use that. So what do we do next? What I want to do at this point is I want to run PHP artisan UI, and then I want to craft this with Bootstrap. So I want to say Bootstrap. So I want to open some few files which will be affected. Of course, my controllers file will be affected, my views will be affected, my CSS will be affected, my JS will be affected. There'll be a new folder over here called SAS that will be added, and we'll talk about that later on. My webpack.mix.js will also be affected. This is how it looks initially, using post CSS and all that stuff for Tailwind. And then what else will be affected? I think that's all that will be affected at this point. So I'm just going to do that. PHP Artisan, UI, Bootstrap, Auth, and check this out. I think even my node modules folder will disappear at this point. Let's just see how it runs. So as you can see, my webpack.mix.js has changed. My node modules folder is still there. My SAS file has been created, and it has two files over here, variables and app.scss. What else has changed? I think that's it. Oh yeah, and this has been modified. You can tell that it has been modified, and as well as my node modules folder has disappeared. So I just need to run that npm install to reinstall it. Oh yes, and my package.json has also changed. My composer.json obviously changes because I've added a composer package. But if we come to our package.json, it has also been modified. And what line has been modified? Well, there are some lines over here that are marked in, I think, green. Yeah, they're marked in green. So you can see Bootstrap has been added, jQuery has been added. There's more. There's Popper.js, Resolve, SAS, and SAS Loader that have been added. I think Resolve URL is also there, but I don't think it will be used that much. But let's just go on with the flow and see what happens. So those are new packages that have been added, and on top of that, my node modules folder has been deleted. So I just need to run npm install, and so that it can run and install those packages back into my directories here. Now I'll talk about why each of them are being affected by this package, and then we can go into our controllers. So really quickly, we can talk about our home controller that has been created right now. This just essentially enables us to have a protected page which had been created within our views folder. Remember, in our views folder, we only had our welcome.blade.php, but now we have home, we have layouts, and we have auth, which has password, login, register, verify, all those things. And what that essentially does is it just creates like a login and register page, and then it actually does some interlinking with the database with also our users table, which is over here in our migrations. So our users table has been modified. We needed to actually push those changes, but we've already migrated to the database. We've also not tracked these blog comments and categories, which you also need to migrate to the database. And then something else had been created that needed to be noted, and I can't quite seem to see, but it's just this home controller. And what this essentially enables us to do is it creates, like I said before, a protected page that is home, which will also be declared in our routes. Yes, that's what has been changed, and I have not actually documented on it. So going to our routes, we can see that it's also been modified, but we've not even touched it. So what has been modified? Well, there are two commands over here that I've run. This one is to enable that the authentication routes of login, register, and verify, and all those other commands have been thrust into our routes folder so that we can be able to access them throughout our web page. Next, we also have our function over here called get, and this one basically is a get request to our home URI. So if you guys can type in home inside your web page, you can get it, and it will probably redirect you to login because it's a protected route. Because if you guys can see, it's going to the home controller and looking for a function called index, and the name is home. So now inside our home controller, the function called index will return the view called home, which is essentially this one. So what happens is there's a construct function that has been declared. What a construct function does is it initializes every single time that any function in this class is called. So now, if any function in this class is called, such as index, for example, then this has to run first before anything inside here runs. So if this actually is a function that returns a boolean, either true or false, and it's a middleware. So this middleware, there's a middleware that has been declared with the creation of all this authentication and stuff, and it's called auth. So it checks if there is a user that has been logged in, and if there's no user that has been logged in, it will not go to home. It will actually redirect us to the place where you're supposed to log in. So basically, this middleware needs to be fulfilled. This user needs to return true on this function request, and upon returning true, that's when we can go to the home page. If false, then it goes back to the login or register. Well, goes to the login page basically. And if you want to register, well, you click register and go and register. Now there's some more to it inside here, so we can go and check out first of all how the styling is done for Bootstrap and everything that we've done so far. So we can see over here we have app.scss. Our app.scss imports some three things, this is actually our main folder over here, main source file, and it will import a font over here called Nunito from Google Fonts, and then it will import our folder called variables, which is this variables.scss, and essentially this, whatever it has, is just these declaration of variables within here. And then it will also import a file over here called bootstrap/scss/bootstrap, but there's a hyphen that is called over here. So what does this essentially point to? It's noticed that this will essentially point to whatever is inside the node modules folder. So it's just telling it to go to the node modules folder and look for a file or folder called bootstrap. So it's going to go to the node modules folder, look for a folder called bootstrap, which is over here, and then it's going to go to our SCSS, which is here. Then it's going to look for bootstrap.scss or bootstrap.scss or underscore bootstrap.scss, which is this file right here. So this is all the bootstrap importations that are to do with all the styles that are being held within here. So there's this one, which is the grid system. There's the image system right here. There's some progress system, which is here. There's some modal systems as well. I don't like over here. You can see. And yeah, so that's it for looking into Node.js. And then there's something else that changed, which is our webpack.mix.js. So our webpack is what usually enables us to compile our Sass. If you guys are not familiar with what Sass is actually, it's a CSS preprocessor. So I'll get more into that in the near future. I'll talk about it more. What Webpack essentially does is it enables us to compile our Sass files into our CSS and then puts them into a directory that we usually get our CSS files. So basically, it's going to take whatever is in our resources, JS, app.js, and compile it to a better, more readable version of that JavaScript file inside our public folder, and then create a JS folder if it's not there. And if it's there, then it puts that app.js inside that JS folder. Same thing for our Sass. This function now compiles it with Sass settings. It goes to resource/sass/app.scss and posts a CSS file inside our public.css but it compiles this CSS file. It compiles it to a more readable CSS for our HTML and whatnot. And then source maps, I don't know what this function does. Someone can tell me in the comments. But I know it's meant to be there because it actually wasn't there from the very beginning, so let it stay there. Good. So if we want to test our Webpack if it's working, all we need to do, as we were defined for over here, we need to run this npm run dev. But we know that this function has to do something. Where is this function? Where is the function or the capabilities of this function being outlined? Well, all of that is inside our package.json. Wherever we have scripts, we have the npm run and then combined with the words that are there to give us whatever we want to do. So there's this one function that our terminal has outlined for us to do. That's the npm run dev. What it essentially wants us to do is npm run development. And npm run development is another command that's within here. It runs a certain package called cross-env that changes the node env, that's the node environment within our .env, changes it to development if it's not development, and then it runs the webpack.js within our node modules folder, and then essentially does the thing. So we'll get into that in a few minutes. So stay tuned and hold on to your caps so that you don't get a brain overload. If you need a break, take a break. You'll see it in the next video.